Tucked into the quiet woodlands of southeastern Pennsylvania stands Hopewell Furnace National Historic Site, a preserved iron-making village where the story of early American industry still lingers in stone, soil, and forest. Today, the landscape feels peaceful. Tall trees sway gently overhead. Birds call from the canopy, and sunlight filters down onto weathered buildings that have stood for centuries. Gravel paths wind between structures that once formed the center of a bustling industrial community. It is difficult to imagine that this quiet place was once filled with smoke, sparks, and the steady roar of fire. In the late 1700s and throughout the 1800s, Hopewell Furnace was an essential part of a growing nation. Iron was the backbone of progress. It shaped farming tools that worked the land, stoves that warmed homes, cookware used in kitchens, hardware for buildings, and munitions during times of war. Before steel-dominated industry, iron shaped daily life, and places like Hopewell made that possible. At the center of everything stood the furnace stack. Built from massive blocks of stone, it rises solid and square against the sky. Within its walls, iron ore, charcoal, and limestone were carefully layered from the top. Once ignited, the furnace generated temperatures hot enough to separate molten iron from rock. The process demanded precision and constant attention. When the furnace was in blast, it operated continuously for months at a time. It could not simply be turned off at the end of the day. Workers labored in rotating shifts, feeding the fire around the clock. By night, the glow from the stack illuminated the surrounding woods, and the air pulsed with heat and the metallic scent of industry. Drawing molten iron from the base of the furnace was dangerous work, requiring strength, coordination, and trust among the crew. Every successful pour represented skill earned through experience. Hopewell was not only a place of fire and labor, it was a village, self-contained and carefully structured. Workers and their families lived just steps away from the furnace yard in sturdy stone houses. Nearby stood barns, workshops, storage buildings, and fields for crops. Overlooking the community was the Iron Master's house, larger and more refined, reflecting the social structure that shaped daily life here. Life at Hopewell followed the rhythm of production. When the furnace ran at full capacity, the pace was relentless. When it shut down between seasons, attention shifted to farming, repairs, and preparation for the next blast. The entire village moved together according to this industrial heartbeat. The people who made Hopewell function came from varied backgrounds. Skilled ironworkers oversaw smelting and casting. Colliers worked deep in the surrounding forests, converting timber into charcoal through slow, controlled burns. Teamsters hauled heavy loads of raw materials and finished products across rough terrain. Some laborers were free workers earning wages. Others were indentured servants, bound by contracts for years at a time. In its early decades, enslaved individuals were part of the workforce as well. Their labor contributed significantly to the furnace's success. Recognizing their presence adds depth and honesty to the story. Daily life extended beyond the furnace yard. Families planted gardens, preserved food for winter, and raised livestock. Children carried water, gathered firewood, and assisted with chores. Community gatherings and religious observances offered connection in a life shaped by demanding work. Nature played a critical role in sustaining the furnace. Before coal became dominant, charcoal powered iron production. Creating it required enormous amounts of wood. Colliers stacked logs into large mounds, covering them carefully so the wood would smolder slowly rather than burn away. This steady demand reshaped the landscape. Yet Hopewell practiced early forest management, harvesting trees in cycles that allowed regrowth. Over time, the land renewed itself, creating a balance between industry and environment. For decades, this system supported both production and sustainability, a delicate partnership between human ambition and natural resources. As technology advanced, coal-powered furnaces closer to railroads began producing iron more efficiently. Markets shifted, transportation improved. Operations like Hopewell, dependent on charcoal and slower methods, struggled to compete. In 1883, the furnace went cold for the final time. Fires were extinguished. The village quieted. Fields slowly returned to forest. Without its industrial purpose, Hopewell faded into stillness. What might have been lost was instead preserved. Recognized for its historical value, the site was restored and protected. Today, it stands as one of the most complete examples of a rural iron plantation in the United States. Walking these paths now invites reflection. The furnace no longer burns, yet its presence remains powerful. The homes speak of families who balanced hardship with hope. The forest stands tall again, living proof of renewal. As the years passed, life at Hopewell unfolded in steady cycles shaped by seasons, labor and light. Each part of the year carried its own rhythm. Spring brought preparation. Fields were cleared. Repairs were made and supplies gathered. Summer demanded endurance, as heat from both the furnace and the sun tested those who worked long hours. Autumn was a time of transition, with harvest gathered and plans made for winter. And winter itself slowed the pace, offering brief moments of rest while the land lay quiet. Sound once defined this place. The steady thud of tools against iron, the creak of wagons moving along dirt paths, the crackle of charcoal fires and the rush of air feeding the furnace. Voices carried instructions, warnings, and conversation across the yard. These sounds formed the backdrop of daily life, so constant that silence would have felt unfamiliar. At night, the furnace transformed the landscape. Firelight flickered against stone walls. Smoke drifted upward, glowing faintly against the dark sky. The forest beyond reflected this light in shifting patterns, reminding everyone that even in darkness, the work continued. For those living here, sleep came in short intervals, shaped by shift changes and responsibility. Despite the demanding nature of life at Hopewell, moments of human connection endured. Shared meals, celebrations, and quiet conversations helped balance the weight of labor. Traditions were carried from one generation to the next, blending old-world customs with the realities of a new land. These moments, though rarely recorded, formed the emotional core of the community. Time also left its mark on the physical structures. Stone walls weathered slowly. Wooden beams bore the marks of use. Tools showed wear from countless hands. Each detail reflected years of effort, adaptation, and persistence. Nothing here was ornamental. Everything had purpose. When production slowed and eventually stopped, silence settled in gradually. Nature began its patient work. Moss crept across stone. Leaves filled walkways. Trees reclaimed open spaces once cleared for industry. What had once been shaped by fire and motion softened into stillness. This transformation did not erase the past. It preserved it in another form. The land remembered. The buildings endured. The forest became both a witness and a caretaker, holding the story until future generations were ready to listen. Today, visitors move through this landscape at a different pace. Footsteps replace wagon wheels. Wind through trees replaces the roar of flame. The absence of noise invites reflection. Without distraction, it becomes easier to imagine what once filled this space. Standing near the furnace stack, it is possible to sense the scale of effort required to keep it alive. Near the homes, one can picture families shaping ordinary lives within extraordinary circumstances. Along the forest paths, the connection between natural resources and human ambition becomes clear. This place reminds us that progress is not only measured by what is built, but by what is learned, preserved, and remembered. It asks us to consider how work defines identity, how communities form around shared purpose, and how landscapes absorb the marks we leave behind. In this way, Hopewell is not frozen in time. It continues to change, through seasons, through visitors, through memory. The story remains unfinished, carried forward by those who walk these paths and reflect on what came before. Though the flames have faded, their legacy endures, etched into stone, rooted in the land, and carried forward by those who pause to listen. If you enjoyed this journey through Hopewell Furnace National Historic Site, please consider liking this video. It helps others discover these quiet places where history still speaks. And if you'd like more immersive stories, scenic explorations, and moments of reflection like this one, subscribing lets you join us on future journeys.